All right, guys. Happy Financially Lit Friday. I am Denise Nicole, your financially lit Black girl advocate, and today we are talking about something juicy. Okay, we are talking about the number one reason Black girls' net worth is 90. You heard that right, 90% less than everybody else. And the information that I'm going to share with you is even going to go as specific to basically equate everybody else to white men, right? And so these are not titles or comparisons that I have come up with. Goldman Sachs actually did a research study, and they published their research. They published their findings. And the title, or the things that really stood out, the thing that they highlighted, is that Black women, their net worth is 90% less than white men. We are talking about America, and you may have the question like, well, why are Black women's net worth being compared to white men? And I think that, obviously I was not in the room when they decided to do this research. I was not in the room when they did the research or when they compiled the evidence. But in my mind, if I had to guess, it would be, if you're focusing on Black women, then you are wanting to compare it to the top. You are wanting to compare it to the highest it could be. If you're wanting to represent what's equitable, right? Then you would want to compare it to that thing and have that be, I guess, like the market, the standard. We know that white men have been the standard of wealth within this country. They have been able to generate wealth for years. We'll talk about some of those historical discriminatory things that have kept Black women from, being able to do the same thing, and why it is that way. And so, again, I'm not sure why Goldman Sachs did this study. I really appreciate them for this study. One, because as a Black girl, as a Black woman, you may know these things instinctively, right? You may know, man, I feel like I'm struggling up here to do this, or I feel like I'm doing this and I still just can't get ahead. But so I love that they did this to show facts. You're not going crazy. You're not making this up. But then also, when you look at the reasons that are causing this gap, this wealth gap, then you can start to generate solutions, which is what we're here for, right? We're going to go over 3 reasons, or 3 solutions, 3 ways to actually increase it. All right, so let's get into it. Again, Goldman Sachs did a research study called Black Woman Economics, and I will make sure to link all of the PDFs, all of the articles that I reference, because I am looking at my notes. When you see me look down, I'm looking at my notes. So that you can do your own research, so that you can see everything that I have seen and, look at this for yourself and not just take my word for it. And so the first thing that they actually went over was the wealth gap, right? This 90% wealth gap that Black women and white men in America have. And it says, due to complex historical factors and ongoing, which meant currently, right, discrimination, Black Americans, and especially Black women, remain heavily disadvantaged across a broad range of economic measures, including wealth, earnings, and health. And this PDF, the research, actually just dives into how all of these things affect our ability to earn wealth. So let's get into it. The study focuses on the wealth gap of Black women, its relationship with the broader economic disadvantages Black women face, and identifies public and private investment opportunities to help close these gaps. So we're not going to talk about these. We're going to talk about personal things that we can do to help close these gaps. One of the reasons why I started Financially Lit Black Girl is because I just had a desire to help people increase their net worth. This was before I saw this study. This is before I knew how bad it actually was. So again, I'm thankful that we have these actual numbers, and it just, some of the stuff we're going to get into makes me angry, right? Because we had nothing to do with why it was the way that it was, but we can have something to do with changing it, not just for ourselves, but for our families to come. So the number one reason, I'm just gonna get into it. The number one reason that Black girls' net worth is 90% less than white men is the wage gap. Okay, so what is the wage gap? Lower levels of earning for Black households account for about 2/3 of the average wealth gap, while the remainder, right, so these other reasons, is largely explained by financial factors, including access to capital, access to investment opportunities, personal finances, financial education, which is what we're doing here, and housing. Okay, so when we talk about the wage gap, what we're talking about is the fact that Black women make less in the labor market, primarily because they are paid significantly less per hour, and also because they are 10 percentage points less likely to be employed than white men. Okay, so let's break that down. Not only are Black women not being paid as much, they're not being hired as much. Okay, so that's number one. This wealth gap again makes up 2/3 of the wage gap makes up 2/3 of the wealth gap. So when we talk about this 90% difference, 2/3 of this is what we're talking about now. That you're not getting paid enough, you're not getting paid as much as white men in the labor force, and then you're not getting hired as often as white men. We already knew that, right? Anyway, we'll keep going. The hourly earnings gap or wage gap of Black women stands at 15% relative to white women at 35% relative to white men. The wage gap of Black women widens throughout their whole life, and especially rapidly between ages 20 and 35. So what I want to say to my young Black girls, right, my young financially lit Black girls, is that if you're between the ages of 25, what this is saying is that you are going to see significant decrease in this wage gap, right? And I think it has a lot to do with the fact that you're just uneducated. You don't know how to advocate. Let me say it like this. You may not know how to advocate for yourself. You may not know your worth, not like your personal worth, but what you are worth in your job. You may just be so happy to get on this job that you take whatever salary it is, whereas a white man in your same age range knows how to go in there and negotiate his salary even at a younger age, right? Okay, so that's number one. The number one reason for the wealth gap is the wage gap. Okay, so say, you can't talk about the wealth gap if you're not going to talk about the wage gap. The second gap or the second reason is an education gap. So it's not just financial education. This is just basic schooling education. It says factors contributing to the education attainment gap includes underinvestment in early childhood education, disparities in school funding, school quality, and economic resources, as well as biases faced by Black girls in school. Again, we already know this. So what I'm doing right now is I'm just kind of going through the highlights of this study. But if you look at the PDF, they actually go into a lot more detail about some of the bias that Black girls and Black Americans face in school, which contribute to this wealth gap, right? I was listening to You Owe You by Eric Thomas, and he was just talking about how a lot of times Black children are not taught how to value education, in the sense of they don't see or know as far as like in the long run how learning now is going to position them to be in rooms later, to earn more later. And it doesn't matter what their actual career will be. Like, even as let's say they want to be an athlete, you still need knowledge and education in order to negotiate your contract, And again, I personally don't believe all Black people are supposed to be athletes. We need more Black people in other rooms, in other industries. And so that's the education gap. The third gap is the capital access gap. So this is, when we say capital access, what we're talking about is being able to access money, right? And so largely because of lower earnings and limited access to capital, Black Americans are much less likely to own high return assets than white individuals, including homes, stocks, and especially their own businesses. Now, I know, if you know like I know, this is changing, which is great. But this is the study that they did. This is what they found overall, okay? So while home ownership typically yields strong financial returns, historical discriminatory policies, redlining, look it up, and racial disparities in credit history and in family assistance have limited the ability of Black women to build real estate wealth. Okay, the median single Black woman does not own a home, and single Black women are 24 times less likely than single white men to own a business. So I hope y'all listening. I'm gonna pull these keys out later, but I hope y'all listening to what they're saying, right? That Black women don't own their home, and single Black women are 24 times less likely than single white men to own a business. There's some keys in here. The fact that Black women entrepreneurs cite limited access to funds as the largest barrier to success, and that Black entrepreneurs are 20% likely to fund their startups with bank business loans suggests that capital access gaps contribute to business ownership gap. So here's what they're talking about. Even if you do want to own your own business, it's going to be easier for that white man or that white woman to go in and get a loan. They're going to get access to money, to capital, to start their business, which is going to give them, leaps forward to be successful versus you having a bootstrap, versus you having to use your own money or go to a loan source that the interest is higher. Things we already know, right? Okay. Moreover, single Black women are 4 times less likely to inherit assets than single white men, which further perpetuates the wealth gap across generations. So, white men are getting inheritances 4 times more than Black women. Keys. All right. So the next gap is a personal finances gap. Black women's wealth is held down by a higher exposure to high-cost liabilities. Black women are 5 times more likely than white men to rely on expensive payday loans, likely due to limited access to formal credit and potentially financial education gap. So again, when I talk about the financially lit Black girl, when I talk about educating you on what it means to be financially literate, this is it. It's like your personal finances. How can you take care of your personal finances so you never have to go to a payday loan? So you never have to get stuck in debt for like ever, and just, whatever it is, right? Because these are the things that are contributing to that wealth gap. You can't increase your net worth if you're increasing your debt to income ratio. All things we will talk about later. So the last two are the housing gap and the health gap. So partly due to home ownership gap, Black women face a substantial housing quality gap, with 1/3 of homes occupied by Black women estimated to be unhealthy. So even when Black women are owning homes, they're estimated to be unhealthy. The fact that 55% of Black women in renting households are rent burdened, which means you're spending 30% or more of your income on rent, further illustrates the challenge of affording quality housing while saving and investing. Because again, keys, these are things that we need to do in order to increase our net worth. So the last thing is actually a health gap, and I think that it was interesting. I don't know if in these conversations you would think like, oh, my health is what's causing me to have a lower net worth. But when you think about it, if you're not able to take care of yourself, if you're not able to have access to doctors, then you're not able to work. You're not able to work as long, which means you're not able to generate the income that's needed in order to increase your net worth. So Black women experience less favorable health outcomes, partly due to reduced access to quality care. Black women are 35% more likely to report fair or poor health and have pregnancy-related mortality rate that is more than 3 times higher than white women. The racial disparities are also especially large for breast cancer and pain under treatment. You're not crazy, Black woman, okay? Consistent with major access issues, Black women are nearly 3 times more likely to forego prescription medicine, also much more likely not to see a doctor than white men because they cannot afford it. The fact that Black women are 1/3 more likely to cite health issues as a barrier to work than white individuals suggests that closing the health gap will also narrow the earnings and the wealth gaps. Okay, so I don't know if y'all caught all of that. The fact that you are a woman and you have to have kids, you take time off to have kids, it's just number one. But then to say that the maternal mortality rate is 3 times more than white women, it's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And I'm just gonna leave it right there. So some of the solutions that are highlighted in this particular study is to reduce barriers to college, increase graduation rates, provide access to capital for Black women entrepreneurs, shout out to the Fearless Fund, increase financial education, which is what we are doing here with the Financially Lit Black Girl, and to invest in Black communities, including affordable housing, quality healthcare, and sustainable childcare facilities in primarily Black neighborhoods. So one thing that they did say that I love is that reasons, right? They estimate that confronting the earnings gaps for Black women could create more jobs. It's going to raise the level of annual GDP. And the way that one of the articles wrote this, let me just read this to you. It says, Black women are at the center of this investment strategy because we know that capital has the power to affect change. And we know that Black women have the power to transform communities. I'm going to read that again because that's powerful. Black women are at the center of this investment strategy because we know that capital has the power to affect change. And we know that Black women have the power to transform communities. So Black girl, they are saying money, access to capital can affect change, but you affect your community. Right? So when you get this, when you learn this, when you teach this, when you implement this, your community is going to change. Our community is going to change, and I love that. So let's talk about the solutions. 3 solutions. There were more, but let's talk about 3 solutions that I want to share with you are as solutions, right, to increase your net worth. So the first thing that I'm going to say is we have to start investing. As Black women, we have to start investing. So there's another article that I'll be posting about this. And it says white men are the most likely of all groups to be invested. Black women are the least likely. It said just 50% of Black women are currently invested compared to 68% of white women, 63% of Black men, and 74% of white men. Okay, so we got to get into the investment game. And the one thing that I like about, or the one thing that I thought about, when it comes to investing, is we can talk about the discriminatory, historical, ways that we have been prevented to get into the housing industry, to have health care. But investing is one of those ones that there's a little bit more, there's less restriction, right? There's no race, there's no one that I can see. I could be wrong, right? If I'm wrong, y'all come into the comments, blast me up, right? But there's less, from what I see, what I have seen, racial discrimination within the stock market to get in there and to learn this game. It's education, right? So if we want to say education is one of the barriers, then we can do that. But once you get educated, nothing can stop you from growing your money in the stock market. This is by way of becoming a retail trader, going in, you know, daily and making trades. This is by way of your 401k. This is by way of your retirement accounts, your Roth IRA. You need to be invested in something, right? It's saying that 50 to 60% of Black women are not invested in anything. That's a problem. I don't care if you go purchase one share of Google today. We need to be invested in something. You know, what are the things that we're always doing? You're always shopping at Target? Go get you some Target stock. You know, you're buying Nikes for your kids? Go get you some Nike. You actually probably gonna pay less for that Nike stock than you do for them shoes. And the Nike stock is gonna grow for you, whereas them shoes are going to get worn out and have to be thrown away at some point. We have to change how we think about money. We have to reframe how we think about money in order to increase our net worth. So that's number one. Get into the investment game, some way, somehow. Number two is we want to start thinking about home ownership. We want to start owning our homes. Y'all heard me read statistics that said even if you are in a home, you're renting, your rent burden, house burden, you're paying more than 30% of your income. We're gonna have to work on our credit so that we can take advantage of these first-time home buyer opportunities and own a home. Home ownership is one of the easiest, well-known, most ways to increase your net worth. Like, people know this, and I know that there are barriers, but you gotta listen. We gotta run through them, okay? Now, I'm gonna give y'all some good news on this one. Black women ages 45 to 54 and 75 and older saw the largest increase among Black homeowners during the pandemic. So I just want to, shout it out to the Black girls, to the older Black girls out here, right? So what this means is that we out here, we're getting these homes, but I need the young girls to go ahead and get, young Black girls, right, to go ahead and get into the home ownership game as well. The reason is because the sooner you get in, the quicker your equity starts to grow. Again, my personal story is buying a home when I was young, living in it, selling it for 6 figures. Okay? So I love the fact that these older Black women are like, y'all get me out, I'm going to go get my house right now, but I need all the Black girls to get out here and to get into this home ownership game in order to increase your net worth. And then last but not least, this is one of the easiest ways. Y'all need to get some life insurance, right? Because one of the ways to increase your net worth, and let me just pause right here because you might have a question on like how does that increase your net worth? Your net worth is simply what you own minus what you owe, okay? Assets over liabilities minus liabilities. What you own minus what you owe. So if you have a life insurance policy and it is worth $1 million and you have, all this debt, you're going to subtract the debt from that, and whatever you have left over is what your net worth is. Okay? That's all that it is. Now, obviously, all of these things make more sense. I guess, like, how to say it, like, when you're not here, right? A life insurance policy only makes sense when you're not here, unless you get one of those life insurance policies that you can pull cash out of. I'm not a life insurance agent. I'm not. This is all about education. This is not about signing you up. So look it up. Anyway, it increases your net worth. Okay. So one of the other articles that I read, it says that more than 70% of Black Americans do not have a will. Now, I don't know about y'all, but here's another thing that does not discriminate. Death does not discriminate, okay? And maybe it does, but we just talked about health issues. Maybe Black people are dying faster than white people, but the point I'm trying to make is that we all die. So the fact that we're not having wills, the fact that we're not having life insurance, that we're not setting up a plan on how to distribute our income. Remember, white men are 4 times more likely to inherit money. That's an issue. We need to get on board. 70%, like, so only 30% of Black Americans out here are caring about their legacy. That's an issue. So overall, 33% of U.S. adults have a will, but only 27.5% of Black Americans have one. The result is that Black Americans are missing out on the largest wealth transfer in history. One of the issues is that people think they have to be old in order to start this, but everyone 18 and above needs to have a will. These are things that we talk about within the Financially Lit Black Girl classes. So the Financially Lit Black Girl classes are starting. I'm watching Financially Lit Black Girl classes because all of these things are things that I want to help educate Black girls like me on, you know, younger, sooner, deeper. And so I hope, number one, that you have enjoyed this information. You know, maybe you heard it, maybe you haven't. But more than enjoying hearing these things, I hope that like I said, it angers you. It propels you to want to do something different for yourself and for all of the other Black girls within your family. And so 3 ways that you can actually do that with me. You can subscribe to my newsletter to get these Financially Lit Friday videos directly into your inbox, as well as to hear any of the things that I have going on. So when I talk about the classes, I actually have discount codes for the first people that actually get into them. So I'll just run through them real quick. We have Manifest Money, where we're talking about mindset. We're talking about the definitions of financial literacy and the reasons why, right? Then we have Make Money, where we're talking about how we can get into higher paying jobs, how we can negotiate, you know, our incomes, how we can start a business or a side hustle. Then we're going to move on into managing the money. Once we get it, what are we doing with it? Are we just spending it? Are we managing it so that we have, because we need money in order to grow our net worth, right? So we need money to come into the bucket, but then we have to manage it so that it goes where we want it to go in order to reach our goal. If we don't manage it, it will manage us. Next, we're going to talk about multiplying money. So when we talk about the investments, getting investments, like what I'm talking about today is just like overview, but we want to get deep into it on, you know, just showing you how easy it is just to get started to be an investor, what you should be doing, where you should be investing if you're working a traditional job, how you can still invest if you are running your own business as an entrepreneur, right? And then last, we're going to talk about moving money. So we're talking about the life insurance, the will, and the trust to protect the money that we generate for the next generations. All right, so again, you can get on my newsletter. You can subscribe to my newsletter so that you get these videos as well as notifications on anything that I have going on. All these links will be down in the description box. We have a freebie, of course. You can, if you want something good, you can go ahead and download our freebie. Y'all have been tearing this freebie up, and so I hope that you guys, well, I mean, y'all, yeah, I hope you've enjoyed it. Y'all definitely want it, but I hope that you are enjoying it. And then lastly, you can join the class, like I said, in the email. So only for my subscribers, you will get information on how you can get a discount as one of the first students in my class. And I'm just so excited to start this with you guys. Like, I'm so excited, like I said, to be a part of the solution and not the problem, and not like continue to talk about the problem, but to actually be a part of change. So 1, 2, 3. Y'all can also like, subscribe, hit the notification box. But thank you for being here. Thank you for, you know, sticking with my journey. And again, I'm just here to help. So I'll see you in class.